Last class and the one before, I kind of focused more on the first two lines. And I'm sorry, it's just something when I swallowed that. So frustrating. Um, the only thing new in line 3 and 4 that's different is this spot. Everything else is the same. I broke that down partially. I may not be able to talk as much. I might just kind of show you, but I showed doing groups. Then do a group. Line up those together. Sounds funny, but it's right. The idea is do small groups and then stop. Now that's an important section because once you can do that, you've got the skills for the whole thing. The next half of the measure is, it's the same as the first half. But to not get mixed up where you are, you're going to want to do it in sections. So probably the first day you work on this section, get the groups, work up to 5. Left hand, just a chord. Get those lined up. That's really enough for the day. You can do more, obviously. The second day, make sure you try to work up to half. Try to get that smoothed out. Because once you can do that, it's just a matter of putting it together. The very next step is just going one beat further and stopping. And doing it so it feels comfortable. Once you can do that, you're probably going to be able to finish it. Then it goes into familiar material. So my advice to you, and I know it can be hard when you've got a lot of homework and you might be tired, try to do a little bit, as much as you can every day. Even if it's a busy day, if you can literally just do a couple minutes of the hard stuff so you don't forget it. So we're going to jump back to this weird position, page 72. The hands are going to be like this. The thumbs are going to share middle C. It is incredibly weird for adults. It's weird for me. It's because everything's smushed in together. If you are seated too close, like if you're all in like this is really going to be uncomfortable. I have emailed between the two classes quite a few people saying you're sitting too close. If you sit back, it's more comfortable. You need to find that place where your elbows aren't like this, but there's room. I personally sit back a little further than the average person. That's because I used to play a lot where I just had big pieces all over the piano and I'm comfortable back here. So on page 72, the only thing new is left hand. The right hand is just C position. The left hand is up here. Now you might wonder, why do they do this? That's confusing. Why did they do it? We already did G position. Why did they do this? It's just to introduce another note in this position. It's like little by little you learn different positions to learn notes. So your pinky, your baby finger is on F. You're just going to walk up. The first couple, well, this exercise is going to be kind of easy because it's just walking up, but it's the brain part that's important. You got your chart. I don't know if you can see this, but the second line up from the bottom. That's new. Then the right hand's just similar. So what is important? It's not the song. It's not that you do it and kind of memorize it quickly. It's the brain part. It's like kind of thinking this through. If your five's on F, what note is your forefinger on? That's a G. You can think letter name or you can think F, up a step, up a step. It's good to do both. Now, next page is a little song using this position. Your hands are really together. It's possible to finger this. Finger this means how you choose to put your fingers in place differently. That makes it more comfortable by spreading your hands out a little. And if I sit down to play this, I kind of do that. However, the point of this is to learn this position. It doesn't go long. Once you learn it, you're out of it. So I'm going to suggest that you really try to follow this. If you're done with piano with 190, though, you don't need this. In fact, if you're done with 190, you can just sort of like, read some text for like the next 3 or 4 minutes. All righty, here we go. Waltz time. It's in 3/4. Melody's in the left hand. I'm just going to play the whole song. So if you personally are going into 290, you want to work through this. If you know you're not going into 290 for a while, maybe a year, it's not important that you do this now. But keep your book. Don't sell your book because we use the same book. And do a review. People sometimes take 190 and a year or a year and a half later do 290. You can forget a lot. So review before you do that. Now, I'm going to show you 2 lines because the last 2 are almost exactly the same. We talked about like 80-20, the idea that sometimes most of the value can be gotten with a smaller amount. If you get 2 lines, you've got like 92% of the whole song. Just focus on 2. That's line 1. The phrase kind of keeps going, so it sounds a little weird there. In the right hand, you have these intervals. Without the left hand, it's comfortable, but once that left hand gets there, your hands are going to kind of knock. Measure 2 is interesting. The right hand has a whole rest, but we learned a whole rest is 4 counts, but in 3/4, it's only 3. It's a whole measure. So you rest 3 beats and then a rest. And so we had these intervals in the beginning of the term. When you put it together, you can try the whole line or you can just do a little bit. You could start like that. Don't forget to hold those notes. Repeat that a couple times, and then you can either start at the beginning and work further or start in the middle. And what I suggest is overlap a little bit, then do the whole line. Then work through the second line. There's some fingering there. They help you out by writing in that first note. Just be aware your hand's in a different position. Don't assume what note it is. Really think it through. So you would decide, is that kind of easy for you? The playing part will probably be somewhat easy. It'll be the brain part that's a little more challenging. I'm not going to work on the last two lines, but let's just look at how it ends. Instead of one more note in the melody, it just kind of settles in. So you're working in that position, getting somewhat familiar with these new notes. 74 and 75, I'm just going to start off with these. In the live classes, I often did only a small part of each of these. It just had to do with time. Like some terms, like the winter term, we would sometimes have a couple snow days. In the fall term, I think there was convocations. There would sometimes be reasons why we would miss a class or two. And I tried to focus more on the things that were important. So I'm not going to cover this all now. I will probably cycle back and do the rest, but if I don't, you'll have videos. Your hands are going to be in this little position. I'm going to play the whole thing for you. There's a fermata there. That's explained at the top. You hold it. And we're going to compare that to 75. And it's usually swung. The eighth note's the first one's longer and the second shorter. That's usually how that's interpreted. So this serves a couple purposes. It puts side by side no eighth notes with the same thing, but with repeats making eighth notes. It's a song in this tight little position. The last line is much harder than the first three, and I almost never did more than just show it and tell people if they were interested, they could work on it. But it's just, it wasn't worth the gain from that line, wasn't worth the extra amount of work it would take to get everybody comfortable. So I'm going to show you how to get started with this. I'll do half of each. So the first one, our melody's in the left hand. You might start with one phrase or you might do a double phrase. The right hand plays one note, so we have the melody that goes between the hands. In piano, that's really common. It's not quite as common in the beginning, with the exception of super simple arrangement where the melody is somehow like reduced to just notes and both hands shared. I can't really explain that. Let me see if I can make an example. Okay, I'm going to sort of fake something. It won't be exactly what I'm talking about, but it will be the concept. I'm just trying to think of something that I could show this that you're familiar with, like the Saints. Let's say that that melody had more high notes and my hand needed to be shifted over. So let's say my thumb had to be on E because there was a high note I had to reach. We don't, I'm making that up. But what I'm going to do is put my left hand to play the first note. I'm sorry, my brain has to do this. So you can take a melody and go back and forth with between two hands. Here's a good example. It's not a song we're going to do. I think it's in the back of the book in the later edition. I'm moving my hands so you can see. Because that's a wider melody, I can use both hands. Okay, so that's the point there. So getting back to this, if you're going by phrase, you might just do that much and probably slower. The first phrase and just add the right hand interval. When you're ready, do the next one. might have to take that in a couple steps because the hands change. As you start getting used to it, it becomes easier. You can do a little bit more. Now, after that, it's just melody between the hands, but I'm not going to work on that. We're going to compare this with Happy Birthday. It's the same as, but one note repeats. Once you learn this, this is pretty easy. Next phrase. Probably slow. And going on. It's never been important to me to finish this. I think you can get the concepts, excuse me, with the first part. And you see, that's it. That's all that position is. And then standing in the need of prayer. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 2 more songs. They were songs I played for you before. And I'm going to break them down a little bit. These are also in the category, they're in the category of somewhat optional. They give you skills, and the skills are important. If you're not going on to 290, they might not provide you immediately with a lot of benefit if you're busy with other courses. If you're busy, they still provide value, but if right now in your life, if you're really struggling with other things that are time consuming, you can always do this later. Alpine melody. I'm going to play the whole thing. Melody's in the left hand. So what do you need to do to get to this point? Previous page, I call it the helping page. Right hand, we've looked at this before. G and C chord, and back on, let's see, page 60, the G to the D7. The D7 is the hardest chord in the right hand, probably for everybody the whole term. And if you're a guy with large fingers, you're probably going to have to adapt. I've talked about that a little bit. Now, if you are not going on to 290 at this point, this is great stuff, but it's not crucial to finishing this class. I want to make sure that you realize what you have to do a good job in this course versus what you don't have to do for this course, but would be valuable anyway. Really, it's all valuable, but like anything, how much value something has depends on what else you're involved in right now. If you're super busy, it might have great value, but right now, not for you. So you might have to hop around for those chords. I'm going to do this 2 lines, break it down a little bit. This is another song that in class live, I generally just did 2 lines. I played the whole song. Line 3 usually is a little harder for people, and usually I just focused on 2 lines because that gives you the start of the skills. That's our goal. My pinky's on that F sharp. Both hands are going to be shaped for the same chords. It's just the left hand will play single note melody, the right hand will play the chord. It kind of alternates. And that's probably how I would start if it were new. The end of the line. The end will likely be harder because of the black note, not because it's black, because it's a shorter note. But because that's what they're called, they present more of a challenge as far as how you shape and place your hand. If you really want piano, if piano is important for you, like if you're in music industry, if you need the skills, if you're in production, or if you just like piano, if you want to go on, ultimately you have to work all these things out. Specific challenges, the more you go on in piano or any instrument, the more specific challenges and quirks of each instrument come up. And generally you work with a teacher who knows all these things and can help you figure out your best way. So for now, we're more of like a general survey. Line 2 starts the same way line 1 ended. Then ends the way line 1 started. I'm going to stop with this now. That's enough to, if you have time, get started. If you do want to get started, line 3 is more of a challenge simply because people miss the C chord. So if you do that, look at these charts. Make sure you're doing the chords right. So one more thing for today. Today I'm sort of filling in some of the stuff that's not related, except for the final, it's not related to quizzes, but stuff that if you go on, you want to do. We looked a little bit at 65, Beautiful Brown Eyes. I'm going to play you 2 lines. Big thing here. The broken chords. This pattern so common. That's a very simplistic way. Stylistically, it's very basic chords, but it's like a bass chord bass. The bass doesn't have to be the root, but it's the lowest tone. You know that song, It's All About the Bass? About the bass? That's your cue to laugh. If this were a live class, I would wait for your laughter. I'm going to show you an example, a little bit of an example that uses that you're probably familiar with. I'm just going to fake this a little bit. Let's see. You've probably heard that. I always called that the pa. Years ago, there was a lot more older people playing organs, like little home organs, and they called it boom chucks because they would hit the boom with their foot, like a foot pedal, and play the chords. So that's a common pattern in waltzes, in ragtime. The chords can even be bigger chords. You can have more varied chords like sevenths. But we're just dealing with the basic triads for now, except for like the simple 7th chords. So the important thing for students in 190 who are going to go into 290 is getting this. Once you get it, it's kind of simple because it becomes muscle memory. Right hand. Tie. You've got to slur over the phrase, smooth, and a tie between the C's. Don't miss the tie. Left hand. When you start this, you will probably be doing these steps slower, maybe like this. And left hand. The beginning should be easy. Measure 3 is where it's hardest. Here's how you start that. I think I showed just a little bit of this. Get the right hand. One measure. You just repeat a note and hold it down. Hold it down. Don't do that. Don't just poke at it. Just hold it. Because you have to build a muscle memory. You're going to do part of this pattern. Both hands, this right hand lifts and repeats, left hand kind of shifts. When I say shifts, the bottom part of your hand plays, then the top part. With myself, I sort of, I don't know if you can see this. I turn my wrist a little like that. Rather than just my fingers moving, I kind of lean into the low note, then lean into the higher notes. Pause, go slow, think. Don't move till you think. Hold the right hand. That would be all I would do for a first session, a first practice session. In one session, you could probably get that started. Maybe not so it's easy, but so it's easier. You don't want to reach that point of diminishing returns. Let's say you do it for 5 minutes and it gets kind of easy, and then you do it 2 more minutes and you start making mistakes. You don't want to go past that point where you're getting it and it's going well and you do some repetitions. Don't stop before you do repetitions because that's where the magic happens. So once you get that, maybe the second session or maybe the first if it's going well, hold the right hand. Finishing it up will be kind of easy. The second line does not have that challenge. It still has that new pattern, which is a challenge, but this is a much bigger challenge. If you're going into 290, you simply have to have that challenge down, and you should work through 2 lines to get a start to physically how it feels to do that. So I'm going to stop with that, and I will do a little bit more with these, and when we come back next time, you know, I've kind of covered everything. There's nothing I've skipped. There's a few things I didn't completely finish, but they're things I don't normally finish. So even if today was the last class, you kind of were exposed to everything, but I will continue working on the things that are more challenging.